Hello and welcome to the Slice of Mentorship Podcast. Today we're joined by Victoria Nicholl, the Head of Incubation Services at Imperial Enterprise Lab, Imperial College London. Known for her skills in business networking, service design, strategy, and leadership, Victoria is passionate about guiding ambitious founders towards making a positive impact in the world. In her roles at Imperial College, Victoria has significantly enhanced entrepreneurial coaching and mentoring services. She's launched innovative programs, expanded mentorship services, and even secured substantial legal consultancy for Imperial founders, all in the service of the next generation of STEM entrepreneurs. In addition to her work at Imperial College, Victoria co-founded the Network for Coaching and Mentoring Entrepreneurs, further demonstrating her commitment to nurturing the future leaders. Join us as we dive into a conversation with Victoria Nicholl, exploring her journey and insights into entrepreneurship and mentorship. Hello, Victoria.
Hi, Igor. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Super excited to have this conversation with you. I know you're very passionate about coaching and mentoring startup founders. So let's start with what excited your passion. Where did your passion come from?
Yeah, so I think I got very lucky. I started working with students and researchers and teachers in higher education, 2009. And that's when gradually over the years, I realized just how much I like helping ambitious people make an impact in the world. And in about 2013, I was working at the Department of Computing in Imperial College London, and I met Matt Clifford and Alice Bentic, who are the co-founders of Entrepreneur First. And part of my job was doing industrial liaison for the Department of Computing. And that's when I realized, my goodness, there's actually a career here. It doesn't matter almost what age you are. You can graduate from university, you can genuinely start a company. And so I went off to Entrepreneur First after I'd been at Imperial and saw the amazing work they were doing there and how they were coaching entrepreneurs on their journeys. I just saw the amazing impact you can have doing that. And so it was a natural progression for me to get to the point where I was running my own coaching and mentoring services from there, just because it's a really wonderful way of helping people who want to innovate in the world, have a positive impact on the world, and make that reality. So it was just a bit of a gradual thing, and all just generally around helping people achieve their dreams.
Was there a specific moment where you felt, oh, I see what these guys are doing, I want to do something similar? Was there any specific point?
I think I just saw lots of different things happening. And I think even in my current role, when I started it was definitely not in the format it is now. I guess there were various conversations. For example, I had a really nice conversation with Michael Moses, who's the founder of Donaco. And he got very excited when he realized I was going for this role. And he was extremely encouraging. And I think even in that in and of itself, an entrepreneur who kind of been through the process and who saw the potential in me to make a difference was enormously encouraging. I also had the opportunity to do business coaching myself via a service we run called Idea Surgeries. And seeing entrepreneurs come back and having actually tested out and done the things that they were advised to do and kind of taken on board the resources that they've been given and the opportunities they've been given, and actually seeing them turn that from an idea that they'd had, a problem they wanted to solve, and actually turning it into a business was massively inspirational. It made me think there's more to be done here. And I guess that's always my thing, that it doesn't matter how much I do, it doesn't matter how many opportunities I provide. I know there's so much more that every entrepreneur out there needs. I mean, if you look at it globally, only 10% of start companies are alive after 3 years. Some of that will, quite a lot of that is down to kind of good reasons, that there isn't the commercial opportunity that people think there is. But that doesn't mean that particular entrepreneur shouldn't be being an entrepreneur. It just means that wasn't the right idea. It wasn't the right problem to solve. So again, I guess what I also saw was that it wasn't so much the idea or the problem they wanted to solve. It was, how do you upskill that person? How do you make sure that person has the tools to go forward and test problems? And that there were dozens of ways I could help them do that. And even now, 5 years into this role, 4 years into this role, I still see that there's a wealth of things I could do. So was there any particular point? No, but I did see lots of entrepreneurs responding to the opportunities I was giving them and other people were giving them, and making real businesses out of them and having real impacts on people's lives.
In terms of your role, what exactly is it called? And how do you feel this entrepreneurial kind of education fits into the broader educational context?
So my role is called Head of Incubation Services. And the kind of thrust of it is that my team and I are very much here to help Imperial entrepreneurs, be they staff or students or alumni, on their entrepreneurial journeys. It's about providing the right coaching and mentoring to them at the right stages. It's about helping them think about the talent that they want to bring on, about fundraising, operating tools, and also creating the ecosystem they need to meet each other and meeting people who might help them on their journey. And how that fits into the wider sort of entrepreneurial education. The joy about what we do is that we're the extracurricular side. So there's a lot of amazing teaching going on at Imperial. Many courses have modules where students can study about entrepreneurship, and of course, researchers, if they've got an innovation that they think could be commercialized, have the opportunity to explore that. And what we do is we provide that space where you're not relying on what you do with us to potentially, get research funding or get a mark in your course. It's that almost a safe space to come and test ideas, to get out of the building, and to also meet the right people. So we're very good about vetting all the people that we will make introductions to for our entrepreneurs. We've interviewed them, we've referenced them, we've made sure that they've got the right skill sets, we've made sure that they've signed appropriate operating tools. So what we're doing is providing that space where, if you want to kind of practically go on and really make progress with exploring your idea, we can help you do that. And that's everything from running masterclasses to providing one-to-one tailored support. So it's synergistic with what's going on in the classroom. The classroom will teach a great deal of extremely useful theory. There will be practical exercises in the classroom too, and we're the next step. So when somebody goes from thinking, well, this is a nice project that we've done on a course, and then thinks, well, actually, what if there's a real business here? We're the people who can then go on and provide that extra support.
I like it a lot. Before we dive into mentorship and the specifics of the programs, I wanted to learn a little bit more about your day-to-day as the leader of the team. And then what do you do? How big is your team? And what do they do on a day-to-day basis?
My role as Head of Incubation Services is very much to think about the bigger picture. How does what we do as a team fit into the wider enterprise lab, the enterprise division, the college, and then externally? So I'm there to think about what partnerships would be relevant, how to, are there any grants that we should be going after when we have guests? So, got somebody visiting from an embassy, for example, and they want to find out more about entrepreneurship Imperial. I'm one of the people in the enterprise lab. There are others, of course, too, who might meet with them and discuss possibilities or just tell them about what we do. So I'm very much there to kind of think bigger picture, but also then, when needed, get into the weeds with my team about what does good look like. So I'm always trying to think about what are the outputs, what is the results that we want to achieve, what stepping stones are needed to get there. I'm there to move things, obstacles out of my team's way if necessary, and also just make sure that they've got the resources to do what they need to do. They're all producing a really amazing high output of work, thousands of hours of learning and connections for our entrepreneurs every year, access to incredible resources. So what I need to do is make sure they've got the headspace and they've got the resources and they've got the training to do that. And then what my team do, I've got 2 incredible incubation services managers, and They each have two faculties, so within the college. So one looks after the Faculty of Natural Sciences and the Faculty of Medicine. The other looks after the Imperial College Business School, even, and the Faculty of Engineering. So they kind of take the leads on looking after those relationships with our version of the tech transfer team. And they also lead on various programs. So one of them will look after our coaching and mentoring programs, and they have two staff working with them on that. And the other is very much looking at operating tools. What are the kind of big pieces of work, the kind of partnerships we can create? For example, we've got a Green Tech Legal Collaborative that provides pro bono support this year to 18 ventures within the Imperial ecosystem for 6 months each. So that's a wonderful resource for our startups to have. And, that person looks after that service, looks after that relationship, makes sure that it is going as well as possible. I've then got a manager who looks after the mentoring service. They're there to look after ventures and mentors, make sure we've got the right ventures coming into the pipeline, that the relationships between ventures and mentors are as productive as possible, that the mentors that we're recruiting are the right people, that we've got the right combination of mentors. The engagements they have with the college go beyond simple mentoring of our startups, because this is an incredibly accomplished group of people, and they're very curious and they have a lot to offer. So making sure that they have that varied engagement with the college is very important. And then we've got a coordinator who looks after our coaching services, and they are very much focused on providing that wonderful ad hoc support throughout the year. So it's over 1,000 hours a year on our experts in residence service, and they make sure that founders get the help they need when they need it. So it's a pretty complex job involving a lot of spinning plates, and their job is very much to keep that all running.
Yeah, it sounds very intricate, but if we summed up the total number of programs, what would you say is the total number of programs that you currently have?
8 or 9 right now.
Wow. And then what's the approximate number of people that you are serving a year? Do you have this numbers? Is it like
that's a great question. It's hundreds. I'd say, I should have looked up the stats before this, what a missed opportunity. I'd say between 300 and 400 as kind of probably quite intense users of our particular services, but that's just the services I run. Of course, there's the amazing programs team, and there's the community and operations team as well. And there are various other teams across enterprise, such as the Hackspace team, who, if somebody wants to build something, they're the ones that help them build it. And, there's the White City Incubator for some of our more advanced companies.
So I'm particularly interested in the VMS program or the mentorship program. And I'm curious how your journey with it started and how does it fit into the bigger ecosystem?
So the VMS program it's the gold standard for entrepreneurship mentorship at Imperial. And it very much has support to the very top of the Imperial as an institution. Back in 2016, there was a decision made that we were going to be providing mentorship. We're an institution that's very good at designing our own programs. We're very good at thinking about how we would like to run things. But we also very much believe in looking at what else is going on in the world and taking the wisdom and the learned experiences from elsewhere and then adapting them to our needs. We think that's just excellent practice. And we're an extremely collaborative international institution. So that very much makes sense to us. So my predecessor and the current director of entrepreneurship, I think a couple of other people as well, went over to MIT and they had the training there from the team over there. And then they brought that back to the UK. The founding director of the Venture Mentoring Service, Paul Atherton, who sadly passed away earlier this year, then took the lead with Simon Hepworth, who's the director of enterprise, on determining how that was actually going to look in practice, how that would be molded into something fit for purpose for Imperial. And it got launched in December 2017.
Very cool. So you launched it, but I'm curious, given the complexity of existing programs and this intricate structure that you talked about, how does it fit into this interface with other programs?
So at the moment, I'd say it's pretty near it's the peak of the end of the funnel, if you see what I mean. That I mix metaphors there. So the mentoring service is very much aimed at those founders who have usually gone through our other programs. They've maybe done an idea surgery, they've maybe been on the Venture Catalyst Challenge or the We Innovate Challenge, competition rather, or through the MedTech Super Connector, or DT Prime, which stands for Deep Tech Prime. So there's a lot of different programs happening across the college. And then what we'd expect is usually, and sometimes the other way around, they'll go through the mentoring service and then also join one of those programs, because that's just the way that journey goes. But usually what happens is we're looking for those teams that have been through one or more programs within the college and shown that they've got that stickability, that they have rigorously tested, they've looked at the problem that they want to solve, and they've tested out their idea, and that there's a reasonable confidence that they genuinely do think there is a commercial entity that they could create, and that they would like to genuinely explore that as entrepreneurs. So before then, it's much more of an exploration of the idea and thinking about, could this be turned into something? By the time you've got to myself and my team, that's when we would hope, or that one of the things we're looking for in people who get onto it. So we are always talking to program managers. We go to the program finals. It's not unusual, if for us to actually be on the selection panels for programs as well, so that we can see the applications coming in. That's massively important for us in being able to understand the pipeline that's coming through. What are the particular idea, because you often get a whole swathe of, there's a particularly hot topic that year of a problem that lots of people want to solve. Or, for example, this year, AI naturally is something that's becoming even more prevalent at Imperial. And you can see it in the ideas, and it's been away for a while, but even more so this year. So again, that would prompt us to think about, right, do we have enough mentors who have particular expertise in AI in business, and to kind of think about that could then mentor those potential ventures appropriately. So we're always looking across the ecosystem to do that. And the other way it fits in is that it's not unusual for our mentors to be on judging panels and the finals or the semi-finals, or sometimes to deliver a masterclass during those programs. And they also give us feedback about what those programs are doing, or if they think there's an opportunity for extra education in those programs. So it might be around, so one of the comments was, actually, we think there's a need for a bit more financial modeling, and for ventures to understand more about how margins should work. And so that led us to develop a masterclass on how to do your financial modeling, which has now been hundreds of founders have taken part in that. So it's really useful to have mentors engaged in that part. So we're at the point where, if you're ready to launch, if you're really saying, yes, we're ready to do this, that's when a founder would come onto our program or the service.
It looked like a very deep integration.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of talked about when the pilot was launched in 2017, and I've read, I think, on your LinkedIn profile that the program grew drastically over the last couple of years, like doubling the number of mentors and companies served. Could you talk a little bit about the challenges connected with this growth?
Yes, I think one of the biggest things I learned during that process was that you can have half a dozen ideas, and I literally did have half a dozen ideas about how I would locate mentors and how ready we were for the end result of having so many new mentors. And put it this way, I had to adjust about halfway through that 2-year process and say, actually, I think we probably got to the point where we need to pause here, because we've taken on a lot of new people, and that's absolutely what we needed to do. However, the ability to scale numbers and the ability to scale engagement are two different things. And you can and if ultimately what we're looking for impact is for impact, then actually there's a certain point where you need to stop scaling on numbers. You need to just really dig down and make sure that you've got the foundational processes in place to make sure that you know what's going on with your coaching and mentoring, and that you know that every single new mentor has a great experience when they join. So it was very much a case of, actually, we need to pause here and productize quite a bit of what we've learned. So yes, I think that was one of the biggest lessons, was that it's very easy to get excited by, oh, we'll get another 20 mentors. But then the reality hits of actually that's a lot of new people to look after, and actually you do need to give them time to integrate. So that was a big learning for me.
And how big is the program now?
Crikey. I think we are currently at 79 mentors, but we've got another 3 or 4 who are just going to final round interview. So that I would expect it to be about 84, 85 within the next 6 weeks.
And
then
about,
I think we're going to have a little pause.
what about ventures?
So Darius, who currently looks after the mentor ventures, I think he said it was 42 the other day.
Okay, so roughly like the number of companies is half the number of mentors. And this is what I see across most programs.
Yes, although interestingly enough, at the moment, we pretty much cap it as we have 9 pitch evenings a year where up to 4 ventures can pitch. And we want to keep it that way, particularly because at the moment, we don't have a fixed amount of time that ventures get to stay on the program. And it's interesting. Some mentors will mentor 1 team at a time. Others will have capacity to do 3 or 4. We also find that there are quite a few mentors who also like giving temporary advice as well. So instead of staying with the company for a year to 18 months or however long it is, they'll just say, well, I've got 2 or 3 conversations that could be useful, or 2 or 3 areas I can help with, but I don't have enough that I can help you with for longer. So it's interesting. I think we could take on more mentors and then provide a richer engagement for the number of startups that we've got coming through. At the moment, I don't think I wouldn't want to expand the number of ventures as much or further than we have it at the moment. But that may change. We will see how things develop.
Sure. I'm curious about the process, because you mentioned like how you had a lot of ideas, and I'm sure some of those ideas were implemented. So could you share 1 or 2 specific things you would consider a success in terms of adding this product aspect to your program?
So I think one of the things we did was think about what's it like when you introduce a venture and a mentor together, the teams. And we took feedback from people about what really helps them. And part of that was making sure that the mentors had an opportunity to meet before they went to go and talk to the team, because it's supposed to be multiple perspective, and the mentors are supposed to be a little team in and of themselves. And whilst we'd expect them to give different perspectives, them knowing how they're going to work together and making sure they've got all their ducks in a row about how they're going to talk with the teams is really, really helpful. So introducing things like that was really impactful for making sure that good initial conversations were held. We created almost a How to Be Mentored 101 pack for ventures. And we're just looking at that again now, because we think it's time to update that based on, observing how ventures and mentors have been interacting. One of the things we're implementing now, so I can't tell you, does it work yet, but early indications are good. We came across the KTH Innovation Readiness Level framework a few years ago. In fact, back in 2019, at the Global Consortium of Entrepreneurship Centres annual conference, we adopted that into our ecosystem. So I think all our programs now use that framework at the beginning, middle, and end of their programs to assess the progress that's being made in various different areas of the startup. And I think the massively useful thing there was that it was a common language, a common framework. So it's very easy for 2 different program managers to use a phrase like, oh, they're very early. But that can mean entirely different things depending on what stage the program is. So what we wanted was something where it didn't matter what you were doing with startups. If you gave a KTH Innovation Readiness Level set of scores, you actually knew where that startup was, and you could go and look at the scores and see what that meant. And so we've started to introduce that in the last year with the mentoring service. So we get the scores from the startups before they join the service, just to get that baseline of where were they when they joined. And now what we're doing is we're implementing every 6 months that, Darius or a member of the team will sit down with the venture and the mentor. They will go through that and see where the startup is now And it's okay to move up and down the score. It's much more about facilitating a really good conversation about what's happened and how it's working and where the startup is. And to ask that all-important question of, is mentoring still valuable? Because I think when you don't have a set deadline of when mentoring ends, it can become quite awkward for that to for somebody to stick up their hand and say, actually, it's time to move on, or yes, we really want this to carry on for another year. So that's something we've implemented, and that it feels like it's giving us a good sense of insight into our startups. And it's creating, hopefully, a really interesting data set in the next few years so that we can understand much more about where the mentoring service has the biggest impact, or where actually maybe there might be places where we look at it and say, so there's a complementary service or there's a complementary resource that would actually be really useful in these areas. So that's something we're productizing at the moment. Trying to think of what else have we. A recusal process is something we've productized. So one of the key tenets of IVMS is that it's unconflicted advice. Mentors are not there to become involved in the company. They're not there to invest in the company. At the same time, there are occasions, and I think particularly we suspect this might be much more relevant to intellectual property spin-outs from the college. There are occasions, so it's happened twice, and given that we've mentored over 100 companies, as I'm sure you can see, it's very rare, and that's a good thing. But occasionally, it could be that the mentor, the venture looks at the mentor and thinks, my goodness, they might be the perfect chair of my company. And of course, what we needed to manage there was that if somebody's mentoring you, then how can you have an unconflicted conversation about them being your chair? So what we had to do was create a process that would be fair to the venture and to the mentor and maintain the unconflicted advice. So that was something that we worked on with the mentoring service board, and particularly the chair there and deputy chairs at the time. And we've developed that so that those conversations can happen. They can happen in a safe way, without encouraging anybody to then pursue them, if you see what I mean. So what that involves is the venture coming to the operations team and telling us, right, actually, I would like to have a conversation with this particular mentor about the possibility of them becoming a chair. We go to the mentor and say, would you be interested in this conversation? If they are, then we secure another mentor, a third mentor to come in so that the venture still has unconflicted advice. And then a conversation is facilitated in that way. So the startup doesn't slow down in what they're doing, but they do get the opportunity to have that conversation and to establish whether that's the right next move for them.
And when you say the startup or the venture wants this mentor to become the chair, you mean the chair of their board?
Yes, I do. Sorry if that wasn't. Yeah, so like I said, it's only happened twice in the entire history of the mentoring service, but it's one of those things that's massively important to get right, because the implications, if it's not handled sensitively, are huge, because ventures are coming in with this expectation, as they should, and mentors are coming in with this expectation of unconflicted, multiple perspective advice, and that they're not there to become part of the company. So if the relationship does change, that needs to be handled in a way that everybody's reputations are protected, and that a great conversation happens to ensure that it is the right thing for the company.
I wanted to come back to the framework that you mentioned, where you measure the stage of innovation to kind of help assess at least where you are. Are there specific other tools or metrics that you're using to measure the impact of mentorship?
We look at a variety of factors, as we do with all the startups and programs that we've hosted. So one is, what are the outcomes for the companies? Do they go on to launch products? Do they, most of the companies at Imperial, given the nature of what they're doing, probably need to raise funds. So again, that's another thing that we look at. Do they generate revenue? Albeit that's obviously a hard one to track because we don't have the right to know that information. So we're reliant entirely on founders telling us. Number of employees as well. So these are all all the things that you would associate with a healthy company. So what we're looking for is a healthy company. We get feedback from founders. So there's the obvious net promoter score question of how likely would you be to recommend this to another founder? And there's the conversations we have. And we do think that direct conversations with founders are incredibly important. We've tried a variety of ways of doing it. So we've tried asking them to send reports after each meeting. And some are great at doing that and some were not. We've tried doing a form where it's a sort of monthly health check-in. And during the pandemic, actually, that worked pretty well. Started off great. Most of the founders filled it in, and we got a variety of data back in, quite a bit of insight. And then gradually, as we've moved out of everybody, working from home and kind of getting back into it, that's fallen off. So we've realized that we needed a new approach. And I think one of the things I've always done throughout my time with the mentoring service is just making sure that founders know that they can come and talk to me. And of course, now that we've got Darius, who's looking after the service, and Boss Day before him, them being available for those conversations, because there are things that people will put in writing or won't put in writing that they might be prepared to say in person, or they don't even, it doesn't even occur to them to come and feed back to you. Another thing that we do is we have, and this is actually one of my favorite events of the year, we have a feedback session at Christmas, and it's the complete opposite of all our other pitch evenings. So a traditional pitch evening, the ventures are pitching to the mentors to obtain mentorship, and actually what happens Christmas party / feedback session is that the ventures who graduated or on the service and gaining benefit come along, and they remind the mentors of where they started out. So when they began their IBMS journeys, where they were, and then they tell them where they are now, and then they pick out those key pieces that really helped them, which is always particularly lovely because it's then in their own words. And I think one of the things that really delights me is that sometimes it's not until a year or two later that they pick up and they realize just how valuable something was. So even though they were incredibly grateful whilst they were receiving mentorship, sometimes it's the most impactful lessons don't sink in until later for them. So I think for me, it's actually really important not just to do it in the moment of time, but to also follow up with entrepreneurs after they've graduated and see what they've understood about what they learned as they've grown as entrepreneurs. So that's a really good one. And for the 3-year celebration, we actually asked the ventures to do short videos for us about what they found most valuable about mentoring and what it's done for them. And we had some absolutely brilliant feedback. And I think kind of key thing and a repeating theme when I talk to our entrepreneurs is that often it's that it helps them change from a scientist or an engineer into an entrepreneur. And to me, that is one of the most impactful pieces of feedback you can get. So you're basically saying, I came in and I had an idea, and now I'm a CEO, now I'm a CTO. I mean, to me, mindset is the critical part of being an entrepreneur. If you don't have the mindset, it doesn't matter how good your idea is, you're not going to be able to execute long term.
I love that example of like a scientist turning into an entrepreneur is an outcome of mentorship. Are there other themes that you've observed both on the shorter distance and medium distance in the feedback that you're getting from founders in terms of the value that they got from mentorship?
Well, one recurring theme is that mentors will often, push them to revenue generation, to really think about how quickly can they produce revenue, how much can they add value to their company. Sometimes there's this assumption on the entrepreneur's part, we've got time, or we're going to raise money, and that can come later. And actually the mentors flip it for them and show them that there are actually much easier ways to get to revenue generation in the first instance, and that revenue generation will make their company more valuable, and that the lessons they'll learn from doing the selling that gets them to that revenue generation are going to be some of the most impactful of their lives. So I think that's definitely a recurring theme. One of my favorite examples was an entrepreneur at the Christmas party. I remember my heart dropped when she started speaking, because I thought, oh my gosh, what on earth is she doing? And she was talking about how a mentor, was just criticizing her a lot and criticizing the idea a lot. She said, and he went on for weeks. So this is Salomia from Lender Care. And then she said, and you know what? I realized this is one of the people in the world who cares enough to criticize, who cares enough to tell me that I need to think more deeply. And she said, so what I learned to do was love the criticism. And I thought that was a really, really interesting point. I guess it's borne out in books like the Mom Test, that very few people are prepared to tell us if we've got a bad idea or if we need to do better, and it doesn't cost anybody to tell you that. But when you've got somebody who's got the insight, who's prepared to help push you towards that. I think another is around social capital. And I don't know if I get this so much as an explicit theme, but it's more the way I observe the behaviors of entrepreneurs who've been through the program. It's so interesting to see the ones who tend to really make it are the ones who genuinely understand how valuable what is being provided. They're the ones who always come up to me at events and say hi, and they're the ones who I notice just gently taking, from all the different places that they've got. So Lucy from Charco Neurotech is a brilliant example of this. She took certain support from RCA, she took certain support from Imperial, she's taken certain support from Cambridge, so that she didn't overburden any particular ecosystem. She got the support she needed. And, whenever I get in touch with her or vice versa, she's always like, yes, what can I do to help? And I think that's one of the things I notice about entrepreneurs. They understand just how valuable the connections they get, how valuable the expertise. So I remember one entrepreneur ringing me up and saying, Victoria, I just asked a question of Shane Leonard. He got back to me, I think he said he took 10 minutes. He spoke to a couple of people. And if I tried to get that information, it would have taken me 3 months. And you gradually hear all of these stories. And as they go along, they realize just how important it is to nurture those social contacts, to appreciate just how much time can be saved or how much knowledge can be gained that would not otherwise be accessible by having mentorship. And one of the recurring themes is that those who have benefited from mentorship are very likely to come back and help younger entrepreneurs, because they know how valuable it was for them, and they know how much they already know that could help people. And my team and I were doing some research with Imperial founders earlier this year. So we went out, 25, 30 founders we interviewed. What were the problems you faced when you were forming your companies, and what were the best sources of support? So a lot more detailed than that, but that was the two main things I wanted to find out. Every single one of them, the consistent theme was, at some point, they've met an entrepreneur a year to 18 months ahead of them, and that person had been transformational and incredibly important to them. So that's another recurring theme that I see with startups or founders. Particularly if they've had mentorship, that they understand the importance of that.
Thank you. Those are awesome insights. In terms of the experience that you are getting, being involved in the mentorship and other programs, what advice would you give to your younger self, like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, as you were just joining the VMS? Anything you would do differently based on your experience of living through those years?
I think I'd say to myself, spend a bit more time, just make time to go and meet every single mentor in person outside of a pitch evening, if at all possible. It's not going to be possible with everyone, it's hard with calendars. But I think that would have been really useful for me, because I've gained so much insight talking to mentors, and it's helped change my mindset. And I think that would have been really useful. It's really worth testing things before you get excited about, big all singing, all dancing solutions to your issues. Don't be afraid of a shared Excel sheet to tell you the truth about people, whether they really care about certain information or not. What else would I have told myself? I'd have told my younger self, mentors really don't want to do admin, nor should they. So you're going to have to really, if there's one area you need to really dig into, is how do you make it as easy as possible for mentors to feed back to you? Give a bit of extra love to making sure I got feedback from founders earlier. What else would I have told my younger self? Start looking out for how to get more money and get more people to help you do this earlier. I think I did get onto that pretty quickly, but I don't think I appreciated just how valuable having people resource on one of the mentoring services. I think you can start off and pilot something, but at the same time, you've also got to be very aware that you've always got to back yourself to succeed, right? You've got to kind of expect that you will succeed. So what's your plan for sustainability as you grow and scale? If you're good at this and it works, how are you going to make sure that that's sustainable? How are you going to make sure that rich opportunity is taken, to as far as it can go.
I love all of those examples. And I wanted to ask about the future. So what's the big, if there is one big thing for mentorship specifically, or for VMS, that is your goal for the next 12 months, what would you say it is?
So Darius Godakis, who recently joined the team, he's our mentoring service manager, and Olivia Brown, who's our incubation service manager, who works with him. I think the biggest goal we all three have together is to automate the routine tasks that are worth automating, to free up the time for the great conversations, the great communication that could take place, and to make sure that the data that we collect is done in as efficient manner as possible, and that we can then start interrogating that data for meaningful insights that will help us identify more ways to help entrepreneurs. So I think my one big wish is genuinely to smooth things out, productize what we can productize, and then really, again, think afresh. I think a lot of good work's gone on, but it's that moment to pause and just make sure that we've got all of that as smooth as possible, because that's when it frees up your time to think big for the next phase. And what does that mean? What does IVMS 2.0 look like? Or 3.0? Cool. We might be at 3.0
now. There is one more organization that I wanted to ask you about, Network for Coaching and Mentoring Entrepreneurs. You're involved. And could you talk a little bit about this organization?
Sure. Thanks so much. So this is something I co-founded with the amazing Dr. Harbin Chug, Associate Professor Harbin Chug. She and I worked together at Imperial, and now she's at Warwick Business School. In May 2020, which was a significant date for all of us. I think, yes, we were firmly in lockdown at that point. We had agreed prior to the pandemic starting to run a day about coaching and mentoring entrepreneurs for Enterprise Educators UK. We'd come up with 4 different sessions about different coaching and mentoring programs, and the last, run by students, run by entrepreneurs, run by this. So, trying to look at the different modalities, and then a session on how would you create your own. So we had about 50 entrepreneurship educators from all over the country come. Of course, it couldn't be in person, so we ran the first online events, purely online events that Enterprise Educators had done. And we got to the end of the day and we realized the conversation was so good, and enough people had said, actually, this is really helpful. We've got actionable insights. We've really enjoyed this. We think we can go and make we think we can improve what we're doing. And we just want to have this again. Are you prepared to have the further conversation? So that's exactly how it was born. It was a good enough conversation. So we just came up with a network for coaching and mentoring entrepreneurs, which is all about helping enterprise educators or entrepreneurship educators. It could be at a university, it could be at a charity. Some people are abroad as well. So we've actually got a global list now. I think we're up to 90 members. Wow. And 3 times a year, we will meet online. It's only an hour and a half, and we will pick a topic. It could be how to recruit more female mentors, or how to, engage mentors. So we'll pick an issue and we'll get that from our members. So we will list. So it's either a direct ask, what do you want us to talk about? Or it's listening to the questions people are asking during these sessions. And we then pick out those topics. And we've been very lucky that Startup Hire, which is an unconference that launched last year, we've been able to attend that on both occasions and get involved in direct discussions there. It's a really great organization. We usually get 20 to 30 people turning up, and we usually have 3 to 4 speakers coming in to talk about the topic, and everybody gets involved. There's nobody passive. They're either putting something in the chat, or sharing a resource, or asking a question, or offering their own insight. So it's a very action-packed 1.5 hours once a term. And we've actually seen other institutions like the Royal Society of Chemistry launching their own mentoring program and being able to use the resources we shared from what we've done to make it easier for them to do that. So it's one of our key kind of missions, is to make it easier for people to set up their own coaching or mentoring or to evolve what they're doing. So it's a lovely group of people that get together and help each other.
Oh, this is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about but I haven't asked you?
I love talking to enterprise educators. I love hearing about what other people are doing. Whenever I get the chance, I will have one-to-ones, or I'll join webinars or anything like that. So if anybody's watching this and fancies a conversation, please do reach out. I'm on LinkedIn. My email address should be on the Imperial website. So just reach out. Let's have a chat. I'd love to hear about what you do.
Thank you so much, Victoria.
Yes, and thank you, Igor. This has been really, really good.
That brings us to the end of another insightful episode of the Slice of Mentorship podcast. A big thank you to Victoria Nicholl for sharing her journey, experiences, and wisdom with us today. Today's episode is brought to you by Traction 5, a mentorship solution engineered to ignite innovation. With Traction 5, you are not just gaining a tool, but a comprehensive system designed to foster effective mentorship programs and stimulate growth. It brings together cutting-edge technology and best mentorship practices to drive the success of your innovators, enhancing the engagement and expediting tangible results. Harness the power of Traction 5 and elevate your organization's innovation. Thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories from leaders in the world of entrepreneurship and mentorship on the next episode of our podcast.